Pledge of Allegiance then. And Brian Cameron, Commissioner Cameron, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I'd be honored to.
Thank you.
All right. That's off. Hands over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Brian. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So motion.
Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. Announcements. I guess, Wendy, do you have any announcements?
I do not.
Greg, do you have any? Dennis.
I have a couple. One is someone has to help me remember when the wine tasting between or amongst the city chamber and community representatives is happening. Is it May 11th? Anyway, there's a wine tasting.
It's May 12th.
May 12th. And it's here at, the Civic Center between library and City Hall. And I would just say that anybody who's interested in, conviviality and having a good time, this is, I think, the 24th annual. Even though during the pandemic, I'm not sure whether we quite had an annual. I think the wine tasting probably occurred at the bar or something like that. So anyway, y'all come because it'll be a good thing to do. The other thing I want to announce is that we have a delegation of folks from Calabasas that left yesterday to go to Warsaw, Poland. And they are on their way to Kyiv, Ukraine. And they came and spoke to the city council last week. It's Igor and Elena Yasno, but they represent a number of folks who give a hoot about, supporting Ukraine. So if anyone's interested in watching their travels, they're doing a YouTube broadcast of their whole adventure. So if you go to linkatraveler.com, I think, or maybe it's just linkatraveler/Calabasas, because they're giving credit to the folks who are supporting the trip.
How do you spell Linka?
Linka is Lenka.
Okay.
And then Traveler, Traveller. And you can also just look up Igor and Elena Yasno, and I think they're going to be there. But they are on their way to Kyiv, and they have arrangements with the folks from Connecticut who have started a Ukraine Aid International organization. That's ukraineaidinternational.org. And they are partnering in Kyiv to see if we can find a sister city that needs support from the citizens of our area, Calabasas, and basically the way forward.
That's a great idea.
Stay tuned, and you can watch the television reports. There's already 2 videos on YouTube of them going and arriving and getting ready to go from Warsaw to Kyiv, if they can figure out how to make it all happen. You can imagine going in a war zone is going to be quite a thing.
Sure.
So,
would it be helpful?
more power to them, and good luck. And hopefully the people who give a hoot about helping people around the world, they can tune in and see how they can have help.
That's great.
Would it be helpful to have the actual exact link, or not necessary? Because I can read it.
If you go ahead and read it, because this is
it's https://www.youtube.com/playlist ? List capital P, capital L, small r, 99, capital S, small m, capital YS, 1, small z, capital F, small z. I said it was extended. 7, small b, capital G, small f, 5, capital Z, small AI, capital Y, small z, capital M, small NNXP, capital, oh no, it's a 0, small n, capital N, 2, small f, s. That is the actual, if anybody wants to watch this back and write it down, that is the actual link
instead of you had,
Forward it to me.
instead of you
can do
had,
that
you
as well.
lost me at HTTP. So if anyone is capable of transcribing that from the site
Thank you,
and
Wayne.
passing it along, but it's just simply tune into YouTube and look up Igor and Elena Yasno and Lenka Traveler, and that'll get you there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, both of you. John
Nothing here.
and Bob.
Nothing.
No, nothing for me either. All right, so I guess we go straight to, do we want to do the presentation first or the oral comment? Okay, so we have a presentation. Do you want to introduce it or or just go straight to Commissioner Cameron? Okay,
Thank you. Could we show the video real quick, please?
And Brian, would you bring the mic up as close as you can, because it's hard for us to hear over the distance.
How's this?
Thanks.
This is NBC4 News at 5.
Remember some of these frightening scenes? As hot, dry conditions persist, the risk of another major wildfire this fall is very, very real. Now, if you live in a fire-prone area, officials want you to do everything you can to try to fireproof your property. NBC4's Angie Crouch is in Calabasas with some information on a new program designed to teach residents how to protect their homes.
The 2018 Woolsey fire came within 1 block of this home in Calabasas. The homeowner tells us that was a little too close for comfort, and it was a real wake-up call for her. So today, she took part in a new free program to help protect her home from future fires.
We start off with an evaluation and we're taking a look at the roof.
Kelly Levy is getting a free evaluation to identify fire dangers around her Calabasas property. Just 4 years ago, her family had to evacuate when the Woolsey fire burned 96,000 acres all around her neighborhood, killing 3 people and destroying more than 1,600 structures.
We do know friends that lost everything, and it can happen to you.
They're inside or outside.
Levy is getting help from a nonprofit called EPIC, which sends CAL FIRE trained experts like Brian Cameron to assess properties and recommend ways to reduce fire risk.
As I'm looking at your roof, you've got the tile is terrific.
Cameron praises Levy's fireproof concrete tile roof, but spots gutters with no leaf guards, which can go up in flames if a flying ember falls in and hits dry brush. He says 80% of the damage done in the Woolsey fire was caused by flying embers.
What we recommend is either putting in leaf guards or alternatively just getting up there with a broom a couple times a year and cleaning it out.
I'll get my husband on that.
Some trees and hedges need to be trimmed back or removed altogether, but the biggest hazard identified is a wooden trellis covered in vine attached to the back of the house, which would be a magnet for fire.
I love the look of how the vines grow on my house, but honestly, the safety of the structure is more important.
Levy says today's evaluation was eye-opening.
I think you become immune to your own backyard, and I didn't see some of the fire hazards that I do have, and I'm going to get on them right away.
Mitigating fire risk also comes with financial benefits. California is the first state in the nation to provide homeowners with insurance premium discounts if they follow fireproofing recommendations. There are similar free programs all around Southern California. So if you'd like to learn how to protect your home from future fires, you can contact your local fire department or CAL FIRE. In Calabasas, Angie Crouch, NBC4 News.
Thank you. That was one of the earlier events where we were asked by KNBC to show them what we do. Since then, we've been on KTLA Channel 5. We've done Spectrum News twice now, including yesterday. And obviously, it's a, no pun intended, hot topic. And yeah, sorry. So by way of introduction, I'm Brian Cameron. I'm the president and co-founder of Emergency Preparedness in Calabasas. I was involved with in my community for several years, trying to put together a organization of neighbors who could react to wildfires, earthquakes, any kind of natural disaster. And I turned to the city for information and guidance as to what the city is doing. And what I found is that there's just lots of really, really good information. I shared it with each of you. That's available and pretty much in storage. So in talking to my other co-founders, we created the image of EPIC as an outreach and education entity. Our goal is to get into the communities, get to individual, and provide them with the education and knowledge that they need to protect their homes. After we kind of formulated that, we came before the city council 2 years ago, and the council was generous enough to give us an initial grant of $25,000 to get us started. Since then, we've gotten additional grants of another 100 and some odd $1,000. But it's important that what we're doing is benefiting the community. And if we have to go house by house by 8,400 house, that's what we'll do. So far, we've done over 100. So only 8,300 more to do before we have to start over again. But it's important. And what we're seeing is that when we do one of these, typically the neighbor, then the person we did it talks to his neighbors and then to the community. One of my counterparts right now is giving a similar presentation to the Greater Mulwood HOA this evening. So, education and outreach. And I promise to make this reasonably short. 10% of the 10% of the wildfire, 10% of the Woolsey fire destruction was caused by that wall of flames. Another 10% was initiated by that beginning, the grass and chaparral burning up to a structure. 80% of the structural damage caused by the Woolsey fire were caused by flying embers. Those flying embers can travel up to 3 miles ahead of that wall of flame. And that's what causes the bulk of the problem. Wildfires are not only inevitable, but they're also essential to the ecology in our area. And while they're inevitable, structure damage is not. And that's the lesson we're trying to provide, that you don't have to live in a home that is subject to wildfire, to those flying embers. If you know what to do to protect your home from that and your community from that. And sometimes it's little things. It's really basic things like the vents on your screen or the screen mesh on your vents. Building code up until recently was that you could put a 1/4-inch mesh over your vents to keep the critters out. Now what the fire department is saying is that 1/4-inch is too big. 1/4-inch allows those embers to get into your attic space. And once they're in there, there was a terrific video that they showed us in training. It was a film crew going through an abandoned a neighborhood that had been evacuated, and the fire was on its way. And they came around a corner, and there was a fire truck parked out in front of a house, and they were rolling out hoses. And I go, oh, okay, pull over, get out the camera. And they went up to the captain of the fire truck and said, "Are you here to fight a fire?" And he said, no. He said, "We're in a secondary defensive position. In case something goes horribly wrong, we're kind of a backup." And as they were talking about what they were doing, you could see over the captain's shoulder, a fireman come walking out from behind the house. And he walks up to the captain and he says, "Captain, there's smoke coming out of the attic." And the captain said, "All right, roll up the hoses. We're moving to our next defensive position." I know that look is when I tell the story, it's the same look I gave. What fire departments fire units are allowed to move into a house to fight the blaze if there is a second fire truck outside to rescue them if something goes horribly wrong inside the house. There wasn't. They were by themselves. So they did not have the option of fighting that attic fire, and it burned to the ground. And that's a lot of the destruction we see is starting in the attic space. There was another video of in Orange County. There was a couple of years ago, there was a wildfire. And because I'm geeky and nerdy, when I'm watching these things on television, I'm actually focusing on what's not in the center of the screen. And they were showing this house that was engulfed in flame. And as I looked, the house right next door, nothing, no damage. Because, and it's not luck, it's preparation, planning, preparedness. And the house next door had done the things necessary to protect their house from the wildfire. And you could see the house in question. It was burning on the second floor. It ultimately would consume the whole house, but it started up high and was burning its way down to the ground. So when we do these home hardening evaluations, you saw me, we wave my hand a lot. You saw that we were looking up at the eaves. We were looking up at the roof. Oftentimes that's where it gets started. And so anything you can do to protect that surface. The gutters are wonderful for, collecting rainwater. They're also really good for collecting dried leaves and things. And an ember can come flying, land on the roof. And if the roof is in great shape, then fine. It doesn't do anything other than the ember will roll down and land in the gutter. And if there's flammable material in there, now you've got a flame at the edge of your roof. We also look at the ember resistant zone, which is from any wall out 5 feet. And this is more than just, this is kind of science driven, that if you've got material that can burn in that 5 foot space, then you've got a risk. Outside of the 5 foot space, anything burning might char the side of that house, but isn't as likely to cause it to burst into flames and burn the house down. In recognition of that, the fire department, as you probably know, well, take a step back, the state, as you know, last year passed a new law requiring homeowners to maintain a 5 foot ember resistant zone. Fire department is going out now doing examinations of neighborhoods, but I know because they were at my house yesterday taking pictures and at my neighbor's house. And what they'll be doing is issuing reports saying, we see you've got a problem here, you need to fix that. Those reports that are going out, will be going out now, aren't mandatory. It's kind of, okay, this is what you need to do. Next year, they're going to come around again. And next year, when they issue the report, it's going to be mandatory. It's going to be fix this, or we're going to send in a crew and we'll fix it for you. And we'll send you a bill for what we do. So we're trying to get, to the extent that we can, we would like to get ahead of that curve. We would like to get people aware and cognizant and start to do the things they need to do now to develop that 5 foot ember resistant zone around their house and any outbuildings that they may have. I promised I would not take a lot of your time, and I really appreciate your time. I guess what I'm asking for from the Planning Commission, I sit on the Public Safety Commission, and we talk about this every 3 months. But if the Planning Commission could consider
incorporating some of these home hardening techniques in the planning process for for developers or for people who are coming before you with asking for a waiver or whatever. It would be helpful if you're cognizant of it and can bring it up. I don't know if you can mandate it, but to the extent that you can bring that issue to the surface, it would help the entire community. And with that, I'm going to close. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Brian. Before we go to questions, can you tell us in some shorter way how to reach you?
Well, let's see. I wrote down what Commissioner Fosberg was. We can be reached at www.epic-fsc.com. Emergency Preparedness in Calabasas. We are Fire Safe Council, FSC. We're a 501c3 organization, not for profit. We have probably about 20 volunteers doing various things now. None of us are getting paid anything other than, a good amount of gratitude, which we appreciate. And and we're continuing to grow. We have actually 3 elements. Home hardening is just one of them. The other is earthquake preparation and recovery. And the third one is emergency communications to home occupants. It's a amateur radio-based communication platform that will work whether there's cell coverage, electricity, or, if everything else is down, echo will still be up. And I've already got an agreement with the city that we will have a seat at the Emergency Operations Center. And we will have duty officers in the field. One of the city has got a great radio station with a 10-watt transmitter that they can transmit emergency information on. And it's an AM station. And when I talk to people in the communication department about this, one of the things that comes up is that, okay, you've got a 10-watt station. That's great. We have portable radios that broadcast at 50 watts. So we're more likely to get information into the nooks and crannies of the city than the city's radio station is. Not putting down the radio station at all. It's an important feature. But the ECHO program is going to be significant as well.
All right. So it's EP as in Paul, IC-FSC, Frank, Sam, Charles.com.
Yes.
Great. All right. So questions or comments, Wendy?
No, I just, the very important and eye-opening presentation. And I, for one, very much appreciate receiving the information. And I will follow up, but I have no questions at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg?
I'm a little concerned about overreach from the fire department. And so I understand them telling me to remove some bushes and shrubs. Will they tell me to get a new roof if they don't like my roof? And will they put that roof on and then charge me for it? How far are they going to go with this? And in the past, I found that there has been very little enforcement from the fire department. They used to, every year they would post notice on all our properties and they would make the physical inspections, and they haven't done that for 15 years. So the question is, is there really going to be enforcement here, or is this just more paper without any teeth to it?
I think that's an excellent question. It's a question I've asked. And what I've been told by the fire captains or fire chiefs is that, yes, we're mandated to do the inspection and to issue the reports. And just like they're doing now with brush clearance. Brush clearance becomes but that's out 200 feet from the property. And they are in fact
mandating and doing some of that brush clearance if the homeowner doesn't and charging them for it. What the law does is move it from 200 feet down to 5. And that's, I've been told that they're going to be doing it. I don't know where they're going to get the manpower from. I'm also concerned that if they go around and issue these reports and they're going to be inspecting, I think it's 5,600 homes in a fairly short period of time. And if 20% of them, 10,000 homes, you need to do this and this and this, where are all the tree trimmers going to come from? Where is all the, it's going to be, it's going to be hard to implement, but we don't get a say in it. We're kind of a third-party NGO, and it's up to the fire department to figure out how they're going to solve the problem.
I'm wondering if, if people have trouble paying for some of these things, are there any programs in the pipeline, from the state or, local municipalities that can help people that can't afford to do this, low interest loans or grants or, anything like that to help people along that aren't able to afford some of these things that they're going to require. Are you aware of anything like that?
I have not heard of anything in place right now, but the mandatory part of this isn't going to kick in for a year. And I'm hoping that in that period of time, grants will open up and be provided for people who need that support. But again, I don't control that.
John, do you have any comments?
No, I just want to thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Bob?
Yes, I do. Brian, can you tell us where we can get information on those ember grates you were talking about for the vents?
No. There are companies out there who sell those things, and there are companies that provide you with leaf guards, can sell you leaf guards too. There are good ones and there are bad ones. Probably the Cadillac of vent guards is a company that it has a built-in function that when it gets overheated, as in fire coming, it automatically shuts down. And so you don't have to worry about whether it's working or not. Problem is, once it's shut. And to get it back open again, now you've got to go replace the unit and in every space. And as you know, vents are important because you have to have fresh air flowing in that attic space. Otherwise, you're susceptible to toxic mold and that kind of stuff. When we do our evaluations, we try to not only educate and point out, but also offer suggestions, mitigation. And the simplest way is to go to Home Depot or Lowe's, get a piece of 1/8-inch mesh and just staple it on the outside of all your vents. Doesn't look very attractive, but it works.
I have a whole home fan which blows through the vents.
Mm-hmm.
Would that work as a preventative measure during a fire?
Probably at the vent where the air is leaving the attic space, but there's also vents where air is coming in, obviously.
That would normally be a door or a window, which would have a screen.
Right. Well, and that's what we're talking about. Screening that is at least or at most 1/8 inch in square.
Okay, so it should be an 1/8 inch square screen.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a good question. I have whole house has several of them, and I know what you're talking about. It does blow air out of the vents. We even had to add vents, but I'm not sure where it's getting the air. I mean, it has to have inputs from something.
Well, during the warm weather, when I use it, for example, I was
you have to open a window or something.
Open a window where it's cooler outside, blow hot air out of the
No, I mean,
attic.
And you also said, I think, that some of these leaf guard companies will also do vents.
I don't know of any that do, but yes, I mean, if they're up there on the roof.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking Bob or me or somebody to go up there. You know, I mean, it's pretty dangerous. I don't even think I have a ladder. Right.
I'm suggesting you do, but I can tell you that I won't.
Oh, thanks. Dennis.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, Brian. It really helps. And I can see, just as we've been struggling to deal with the drought and with our water constraints, and all of us have changed toilets and faucets and put rain barrels in the yard and changed our landscaping and torn out all the lawn. Similar issues face us with all of this fire safe activity as well. I would suggest that our own Public Safety Commission, if they haven't already begun to do the hard work of creating workshops, dialogue, and invention of ideas. I mean, I've got 30 ideas on a piece of paper that I have written down while you're talking that I think are of importance. But if we can actually commit ourselves, as you have done here and we have done tonight, hear the presentation, look at what the fire departments and the institutional structures are doing in order to try to improve our survivability and our resilience, and frankly, ultimately our living continuity. Because after the fire is gone, what do you do then? Just to go and talk to the mayor of Malibu, who lost his house in the Woolsey fire and almost lost his life because he stayed behind. But he's still waiting to get his house rebuilt. Mm-hmm. And there are people in Malibu, you know, I mean, they lost 420 structures down there. I mean, literally billions of dollars worth of loss. And if we're talking about me having to remove, you know, the vegetation that's within 5 feet of my house, it's important, but not all that critical. During the old fire here, you know, in 2016, where we lost the Bartell house on city property at Old Topanga and Mulholland, didn't lose the Masson house because they could see it. They didn't know the other one was not there. And, you know, the firefighters, they just didn't know. And the place burned down and the bridge burned down as well. So we're still struggling to get that fixed up. So we're embarked upon a 5-10 year program here, as opposed to something where we just send out a bullet and say, hey, remove all this stuff and move on. So we need to pay attention to all the technology that's being applied now. And I'm hoping that our commission and our staff and we are going to pay attention to it. I'll tell you 3 examples. Right now at Van Nuys Airport, you know, Colson Tan Aviation has, you know, Black Hawk and whatever the twin rotor helicopters are, basically war surplus, you know, from Afghanistan. And there's lots of these helicopters, but it costs a fortune to convert them to, you know, carrying fire suppressant. But they can spin up and go and deal with a fire in 20 minutes from Van Nuys. They could have stopped Woolsey, but, you know, here we are. We waited until Woolsey is done, and then we say, hey, what can we do now? So that's in place. There is a firefighting station for the helos out of Van Nuys or anywhere else in Topanga Canyon. Between Topanga and Calabasas, it's called 69 Bravo. You know, they have 8 5,000 gallon water tanks, automated access. Any helicopter that needs water supply, they just go and dip in. They turn on the system that allows them to manage the flight control issues and so forth. And they dip in and go and put a fire out. If they're in the air, they can put a fire out in 5 minutes and there's no headline. That's the whole thing. So I've just taken 10 minutes to tell you about all the things that I'm looking at. The city needs to have a program, just as we've been working for the past 10 years now on water quality and water quantity management. And the pure water project that's going on at the water district is essential to fighting fires. If you don't have fire flow, you're out of luck. So our water resources are communication resources, our firefighting resources, all that stuff has to be rethought. And if we actually had communications tools that allow you to literally detect a fire from space in seconds, and then vector the right stuff that's ready to go from Van Nuys or from, the fire station or 68 or 120, 135 over in Las Virgenes. What is it? Anyway, I know 68. A fire station isn't going to put out a wildfire, but they are going to be able to put out a fire once it's spotted. So communications is actually a critical thing, which is what EPIC is about. Mm-hmm. And I congratulate you on, in fact, on all of you and your colleagues that have done this through a 501c3 approach, and they've gotten a bunch of money out of CAL FIRE, over $100,000 or something like that.
Yes.
And that's being used now. Well, at least to my knowledge, to do the inspection program to tell us how to harden our homes to fire and, frankly, water constraints. Much better if we were to say, how do we stop a fire in the first place, instead of me spending 30 grand to remove all of my, my vegetation, and then what do I do then? Maybe I take 10% of that and and build a communications and detection system throughout the whole Santa Monica Mountains, and let's improve our odds. Let's spot a fire literally in the first 2 minutes of ignition, and if they're bad guys, arson, because they do that a lot too. You have to deal with the false positives. The fire's still a big threat. So all that stuff is going on, and here I am blabbing about all this stuff, but this needs to be worked out institutionally in the city. And thank you, EPIC. And you also have ECHO, which is what, environmental communications or
emergency
communications for homeowners. There are tools now in Australia invented in Agoura Hills, interestingly, and Attentis Technologies down there can actually detect this stuff and provide the communication so that I could dial in on my cell phone and say, where's the fire? Where's it going? How do I get out? And it doesn't interfere. It's just like getting on the internet, and it doesn't slow the system down. All 300,000 of us could actually have dialed in if we had that system in place. So if we have all that stuff that we can take a look at, then it would be great for us to make a public issue out of it. And there are suppliers that are here in Agoura Hills. If you go to Southern California Fire Supply, they put a system in at Calamigos Ranch. Calamigos is the only place that survived the Woolsey fire up on the ridgelines. And that's because in the 30 minutes before the fire got there, they had 20 acre feet of pond water that they could, shoot out on guns. And they went from 7% humidity to 85% humidity. Fire went around, just like it was a dome, dome of silence, dome of protection, whatever. And it was, a natural system, essentially. We have so many pools in Calabasas. Every one of them could be a source of creating a little mini dome of protection like that, and automated in such a way that either the heat or the detection or whatever, turns the system on, you can leave. And it would make sure that the house is going to be there when you came back, because 20 minutes is all you have to deal with the wall of flame. Wall of flame goes by, embers are gone, they're on to the next pile. So if we look at all that stuff, and if we actually give support to ECHO and to EPIC and to the issue, I know the Conservation District is also doing home inspections for this kind of stuff as well. Yeah. So any resource that we can get would be valuable. So I would say that if anybody has thoughts, and we've recorded tonight these ideas and your presentation, this will be repeated, but this should be the beginning of basically a workshop and a program to sustain this, and not just to recover, but to how do we survive and then move on as well. So I'll be happy to help in any way I can, and just keep up the good work. And let's put these topics down. Oh, one last thing. Here's the scary part. I had to renew my homeowner insurance, earthquake insurance, and my blanket insurance policy. And I learned that this company that I picked wouldn't renew my policy unless I conformed to a law that the law gives me 5 years to conform. But the insurance companies are the lead agency now for the legislature and CAL FIRE to tell me I have to fix my house. They told me I had to fix my eaves, my first floor, grate
Events.
screens for ember control. And I had to do that by February 28th, or they wouldn't renew my policy
February 28th of this year?
this year. And I have 5 years. I told that to, I said, hey, I was the mayor of this town. We made ordinances for fire protection and water protection and everything else. And the locals are going to make those laws as to how we deal with the home level response. Homeowners associations, organizations like EPIC, we're all going to have to build this entity that helps us survive this new threat. Once it was water and drought, now it's fire and devastation. And it's all going to cost us a lot of money. And we should be looking for support, just like we got, rebates on our toilet exchange, and we took out our lawns and got $2 a square foot for the lawns to put in drought resistant stuff. We should be doing that with our fire prevention and fire protection and fire recovery stuff as well.
Good.
I have one last question. The radio that I got, is it an AM radio?
Yes.
The emergency radio, I think you're talking about.
No, the NOAA radio.
Yeah,
The savvy seniors, I think, tapped into the resources to get, the radios.
Yes.
It scared the Jesus out of you if you're sitting and watching television and it goes, whoa, the thing just lights up and
it makes a noise too. Yeah, so you can hear it throughout the house.
But it's one way. I don't get to talk back.
No, it's
and with this other communication system that Attentis Technology is using in Latrobe Valley in Australia, in Melbourne, it's two-way communication for everybody, which is, I think, a really cool thing we should investigate. Anyway, thanks for letting me talk along.
Oh, no, thank you, Dennis. I know that HOAs are having problems renewing policies and homeowners as well. So this is something we have to take seriously. And also,
actually, we should ask our attorney. Could you help us understand what the deadlines in the legislation that has been passed and is likely to be passed will be, just like we've been doing with housing and water control and everything else? So it'd be helpful to be able to have that discussion here where we could say, well, by November of this year, after the fire season, you better have had your home inspected and you better have your plan put together and you better get your budget out too. But is that something that I have to do, or is that something that is recommended by CAL FIRE from the legislature because of the state law that was passed? I don't know the answer to that.
Right. I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but it's certainly something that we can look into and provide to the commission.
Well, it's an area to investigate. It's like, how are we liable? And you may already know that. In fact,
no, I don't.
Okay.
I do like the idea of a workshop, though, or workshops.
Well,
so
a
series of workshops.
I
think everybody.
We just talked for half an hour.
Right. I mean, you could do it at the senior center or
outreach and education.
And also, I went to a presentation by Douglas Kent at the Water District, and I believe so. Anyway, and he mentioned that we shouldn't have trellises, wood trellises adjoining houses because it just leads the fire right into the house. And I spoke to a public safety commissioner on Monday about this. And in fact, we did have a project. It's going to come back for a resolution in your neighborhood.
Let's avoid talking about any projects that are. Let's avoid talking about any projects that are in front of the commission.
This issue did come up, and we did talk about it, and we will talk about it again.
Good.
So your comment is noted, and I want to thank you for coming here and making this presentation. Feel free to come back with any additional information, and or please.
Oh well. Thank you. Thank you for.
I have one last thing. You probably know this, but when we had the earthquake preparedness, your newspaper story, that's Brian, and that's the earthquake, monitoring device. We had Lucy come out and talk to us about it. We actually have that on our video file. in our Granica system, we should be playing that for earthquake preparedness as well, because she went through some really cool stuff and the council paid a lot of attention, people did. And there's probably a couple of experts that we can invite here as public speakers to deal with either the technology or with the, the financial response that we're going to have to come up with in order to afford doing all this stuff. So maybe we get a banker. I think it was Silicon Valley Bank, we get somebody come down to.
He would spend more time.
It isn't working anymore that likes to tell us about how we're going to finance this stuff.
All right. Thank
you
again.
very much, Brian. It reminds me of the Johnny Carson joke when he moved to California. He said, it's not true that we don't have any seasons here. We do. It's like fire, flood, earthquake, and drought. Those are our 4 seasons. So
I also want to comment just really quickly that the city of Calabasas is really lucky to have EPIC. I was looking up fire safe councils throughout the LA County region, and our neighboring communities do not have that. So Calabasas residents are very lucky to have EPIC available to assist them. And since I think EPIC has come on board, I know our emergency preparedness department has put more effort into updating our website. So we do have information about earthquake preparedness, fire preparedness, including the brush and defensible space. We also have contact information for EPIC as well on our website. So, we're certainly working through our emergency preparedness department to help educate the city as well, but clearly very lucky to have EPIC.
Thank you. Thank you. And
we are. Thank you.
And the department is doing a marvelous job, by the way. They're really coming around and improving day to day. So, yeah, happy to be partnering with you guys.
Thank you very much. Really, thank you. So with that, we go to public comment, and the card I have is from Charlotte Meyer, who's speaking with Brian Cameron at the moment. So we'll just wait a few seconds. All right, yes, come up, Charlotte. Charlotte Meyer.
Hi, I have to bring this down a little bit. Hi, I'm Charlotte Meyer. Good evening. I'm here speaking today as a private citizen. I'd like to share my concerns about the proposed Cruzon development. To the best of my knowledge, they plan to build 107 apartments on the parking lot located between the Hilton Garden Inn and Calabasas City Hall. If built as proposed, the footprint of this project will cover most of the parking lot and reduce the parking spaces from 126 spaces to about 15 spaces. 15 spaces are not enough spaces to serve all the patrons of the senior center, our city hall, the library, and Founders Hall. All the stakeholders, residents, employees, and visitors will be egregiously impacted. There will not be enough parking. If you and your children use the library and enjoy the free programs, you will be driving in circles to find a parking space if you are lucky. If you enjoy programs in Founders Hall or the Senior Center, you will be driving in circles to find a parking space if you are lucky. If you want to attend a commission or council meeting, you will be driving in circles to find a parking space if you are lucky. Whether you are pushing a stroller with a young child, a grandchild, or your own child, a walker or a wheelchair, or balancing a pile of heavy library books or art supplies, and expect to arrive on time for a class at the Senior Center, Founders Hall, or the library, you should just plan on being late. Living, visiting, or working in Calabasas has been idyllic. Anyone who cares about maintaining our cherished Calabasas quality of life should oppose this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you. Do we have any speakers online? Or
I am not seeing any hands raised.
Oh, thank you, Tom. Then I guess we can move to consent items, but both of these items should be pulled. And we'll start with the minutes from April 20th. And I'm sure John has a comment on page 1.
What do I have a comment on?
Your name.
Oh, it's spelled.
Yeah.
It's probably right in some language.
I have a couple of other changes, and just really minor ones. On page 2 in the fourth to last paragraph, it should say patterns. I think it should say patterns to the applicable watersheds, and watersheds, I believe, is one word. But I guess and then on page, but I want to ask Dennis about that a little bit. And then on page 4, it says that Jessica, in the middle, Jessica Levy is the owner, which she is not. So she's the spouse of the owner of the property on Dante's View. But I also want to ask Dennis if the language is okay, because you were concerned in this item number 2 on page 2 about the watershed, about the.
It's probably not something we can really do about in the minutes.
Oh, okay.
I think we made adequate warning to folks as they deal with the runoff water that goes into one watershed or the other, meaning one, the Los Angeles River watershed and down McCoy Creek to Long Beach, or if it goes down the hills to Las Virgenes Creek and goes to Malibu, the limitation of the city to deal with this in any way is pretty significant, because we're not changing the existing drainage pattern, but the existing drainage pattern did fail, and some of the water did wind up going into the Malibu Creek watershed. And if we restore the original structure or system approach to dealing with runoff water, it's back to normal, but normal should have been thought differently of, I think, at the time. And there's nothing I think we can do about it at this point. So the language almost doesn't matter. I think we warned everybody, though, that this is important to pay attention, because what you don't want to do is have another failure or a flood, even though this is a massive improvement, meaning a massive project. It's still going to be something that someone should watch.
All right.
And that usually falls to the staff or the homeowner association, backed up by the staff as well, because the staff is really not in the position to tell them what to do. This is their property. And the only thing I guess we can deal with is whether, we want to go with the extra mile to deal with the runoff pattern or not. That's a big deal.
Okay.
It's not worth talking about.
Does anybody else have any other changes to the minutes?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, I don't hear any opposed. We don't have to do the roll call voting anymore, which is good. And then on the next item, I wanted to pull that one for just 2 minor things again. On page 11, on page 2, it should say the following companies are the only trash haulers. And then
Page 11?
Yeah, page 11 on the second line. There.
Chair Harrison,
Yeah.
we're going to try to take notes of what you're saying.
Oh.
Changes. And so I'll just ask you to maybe slow down just a tad.
Oh,
if you don't
no
mind.
problem. So I'm sorry, page 11.
You're on the resolution?
Yes. The Planning Commission resolution number 2023-752. It's just a typo really on page 11. It says on the second line, it says the following companies and the only trash haulers. It should be just are the only trash haulers. It's just a minor thing, but I have a question, and maybe city attorney can answer. On page 13, it says the secretary of the Planning Commission shall certify, etc. Who's the secretary of the Planning Commission?
The director.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
We're making Michael work.
Okay, so you have
His magic
numerous
over there.
hats. Okay, perfect. Are there any other comments or changes?
Yes, I have.
Go ahead.
I have a couple of comments and
Go ahead.
a couple of questions. On page 4, item 4, the first sentence of the body should say cosmetic, and do not should say does not affect.
That's correct.
And then down further where it says no later, it should say not later. That's the preferred usage in an agreement.
And what line is that?
That would be on item 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up from the bottom, not later.
So proposed live music will occur no later than 10 p.m. So
Right.
you want not later than
Not
10
later.
p.m. Okay.
And then I have 3 questions. Starting on page 5, items number 4, 5, and 6. Why are they in here? They're not applicable.
In all resolutions where we're making findings relative to a certain permit type, such as scenic corridor, in this case, we're talking about administrative plan review, the listed findings are dictated from the development code. And the findings have to all be included regardless of the level of relevance. We have to include them and address them.
So we have to include irrelevant information. I just want to restate that in another way so it makes the point.
If there's information in the way the finding is written in the draft resolution that you believe that particular sentence or sentences or paragraph is inapplicable and should not be there, tell us what those are. And we'll try to take care of it to whatever extent you and your colleagues decide we should do.
So I'm not sure what are your concerns. I mean, this is apparently required language, but if you don't think it does comply, or there's something
It's not applicable to this particular project.
But I think you could say that.
If I could add to that, Vice Chair Leah, within finding number 5 and our response to it, for example, we do have a sentence in there that says, because the covered patio is existing, the current scope of work is limited to installation of decor within the existing outdoor dining area. The proposed project does not alter existing setbacks, height, site coverage, or pervious surface. So our response to that finding is essentially a long way of saying that nothing is altered, therefore the project meets this finding. But our development code does require all these findings to be met for an administrative plan review. So even if in this circumstance there are no proposed structures, things like that, we still have to establish how the project meets that finding. In this case, it meets it by not altering the existing circumstances.
And what about 4 and 6? What are your rationale for those?
Numbers 4 and 6, all 6 findings for administrative plan review are required to be met in order to approve an administrative plan review. So again, even if certain aspects may not be applicable, we still have to state how it meets all 6 findings.
Okay, so it goes back, even though it's not applicable, you have to put it in.
Yes, so within the development code, in order for the planning commission to approve an administrative plan review, the planning commission needs to be able to meet all 6.
But this reminds me of the site plan review where we have to make certain findings and language from the code. But I don't think this is, this doesn't bother me because it is the landscaping or the additions are compatible. And it does, well, there is no natural
You
environment.
talk about phones, structure signs, development grading.
There isn't that much going on here. They just put in some
Okay.
plastic landscaping. So
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
On page 4 of 13, under enumerated paragraph 4, 4 lines down, there's a clause that says, and the proposed use would complement other restaurant uses and retail stores in the shopping center. The proposed use meaning the decor and the music, correct?
No, in this case, it's for the conditional use permit, I believe, for the live music.
For the live music?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, I don't recall any evidence that said the live music is going to complement other restaurants and other retail stores in the shopping center. How do I know that those other businesses are complemented by any of the proposed use?
I believe, if I remember correctly, the discussion might have been that the proposed live music will bring activity to the restaurant, and that activity will also help bring, customers to the other parts of the shopping center.
Oh, okay. I don't recall that evidence.
I don't recall that, but I'm not even sure we need to say that if it says the finding is that it's just
Right.
the use is compatible with the existing
Right.
and anticipated future land uses.
Well, this is really just code language, isn't it?
So in number 4, the word compatible is the code language. So if the commission would like, we can change the word complement in our response to the finding to compatible. The proposed use would be compatible with other restaurant uses.
I think
You're
that's
right.
probably better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not really arguing. I just don't recall evidence that would support the words as say the complementary words.
Anything else from anybody? No. All right. Is there a motion to approve?
With those changes, I'll move to approve.
Is there a second? All right. All those in
Before you
favor?
call for-
Oh, sorry.
Before you call for the vote, I just want to ask, city attorney, I did not attend that meeting. However, I did watch the meeting. So am I able to vote on this?
Yes, there's no legal impediment to you vote.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other discussion? No, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right. So that passes unanimously as well. And now we go to the director's report, the secretary's report.
Director's report. Our next planning commission meeting is May 18th. And on that meeting, we do have scheduled to have the Dante's View application return. If the commission members on April 20th, they reviewed that and directed staff to prepare a resolution for approval with some specific recommendations, as well as some direction to the applicant for modifications. So that will be returning on May 18th at the next planning commission meeting. We also intend to have the capital improvement project review on that. It's a requirement that every year the planning commission review the capital improvement list that's going to city council in their budget to confirm that it complies with the city's general plan. Not looking at whether or not we agree with, what capital improvements are necessarily happening, but whether those specific improvements are in compliance with the general plan. And just as a quick example, if there was a capital improvement project to build a park in an area that was identified as to remain open space in perpetuity, then that would be something that the planning commission would point out is in conflict with the general plan.
Thank you. And what about, you mentioned, I think in an email that there's going to be a meeting where we talk about some fire issues.
Yeah, we're looking at scheduling a meeting in June to have a discussion on fire standards. Tonight, what was presented by Epic relates to home hardening, which is mostly focused on what people can do to protect their existing structure. If the commission, for the commission to be aware, the vast majority of homes in the city of Calabasas were built before the year 2000 under a very different set of building code requirements. Since then, and due to all the wildfires throughout the state of California, building codes have changed significantly. So newer homes are built to a much different standard. That being said, the council wants the planning commission to take a look at the existing fire standards and make a recommendation to city council. So we're planning on bringing that item to the commission, either the first or second meeting of June. We're just trying to figure out where to align everything.
Can we also bring up our own development code issues at the same time and make suggestions, or if we have any?
Right now, there's not a specific format. It will be a general discussion. We'll have some information for the planning commission. We also intend to bring our building official as well as our plan check team so that they could provide some information to the commission in terms of what the fire code and the building code requirements require. And we'll talk about the fact that the entire city is in the very high fire severity zone and what that means from a building standpoint, i.e. the types of materials that are required and the standards for building in a higher fire zone than if the city was not in that particular zone.
Good, because I'll have some questions about that too, because where I live, I don't understand. I have seen no record of any fire. I mean, no historical record. Where you know what I'm talking about.
Well, let me ask you a question if I can.
Yes.
Michael, on this subject in general, do we distinguish, or does the law distinguish between fire and wildfire?
There are different there are different things at least from a building code that it looks at. There's fires that can happen within the structure that was started by, a stove that caught on fire. And then there are fires that are a threat from the outside. The building code looks at both of those. And more recently, the local fire department has also been focusing on the wildland urban interface. So that really touches on the wildfire component and how our urban environment interacts with the open environment and the risk from wildfire.
The reason I bring it up is that if you aren't aware that there is a thing called the X Prize, and the X Prize is a brainchild of a guy named Peter Diamandis, and he's got an organization called Abundance 360. You can look up any of those and you'll get to him. But there's an X Prize for technologists of the world to deal with wildfire and the wildland urban interface issues. And that's where we are. I mean, if you go to Old Topanga and Mulholland, we had a fire there in 2016, and it is literally on where the Mountains Restoration Trust was bringing all of our attention to the issues of wildland urban interface values and resources, and then the threats to that very set of resources. And if you look up X Prize for wildfire, there was a webinar that they gave about 2 weeks ago that deals with the future of dealing with wildfire in the wildland urban interface that I would encourage everyone to go look at. And there's money in it. If you want to actually get in, you can join a team to be a part of developing the techniques, technology, and the procedures and the laws essentially to deal with wildland fire protection strategies and policies and so forth. That would be, I think, very helpful to our staff and to all of us in town, because we face it every time there's no rain. And luckily we've had 6 months of rain even today, but who knows what's next. The X Prize also is something that deals with all the other issues as well, like making water out of the atmosphere. One of our colleagues in the Santa Monica Mountains, David Hertz, an architect, has invented and won the X Prize for creating 500 gallons a day of water by burning biomass with solar power differential. The only products are biochar, which you can use for fertilizer, and solar power. It doesn't have to be connected to the grid. It's environmentally friendly, and you get 500 gallons of water a day. That would save a village in Africa, or it might save a house in Calabasas too. So, I mean, there's a number of things that we should be looking at from a technological standpoint. And the X Prize is actually a great challenge. There's one for ocean, there's one for climate change, and carbon or decarboning the planet as well. So take a look at that. It's a great resource to take a peek at.
Well, that sounds hopeful. But I also wanted to bring up, maybe I'm on the next part, the upgrading, going into what I call next generation building standards, which will help in climate change and so forth. And I know we're going to have a climate adaptation plan, but it's been years I've been talking about things like, why aren't there more EV chargers in new developments? Why do we have gas appliances? Things like that. And anyway, I believe, Bob, you have some questions or some comments about future agenda items?
Yes, I'd like to see us address the Architectural Review Committee panel. They are approving items that just don't fit. The Architectural Review panel are approving items that just don't fit in the neighborhood. The most recent one is the Dante's View thing. The house looks like the backside of a barracks on a military base. Certainly nothing that fits in a residential neighborhood. So maybe they need to be refocused, and we need to meet with them and talk to them about that.
I think we're going to get a warning again from. City attorney.
Exactly. Just to refrain from mentioning any specific projects that came before. We'll come back to the commission.
But I think he's concerned about how strict they make suggestions and people don't follow them. Then what do you do?
I think, are we done with the director's report?
Oh, are we done?
Let's confirm before we move on
Mr.
to
Director, Secretary.
reports from planning commission members.
Well, I'm done with the director's report. So now we're just on to reports from members of the planning commission, not future agenda items.
Oh, okay. But I think we're mixing that in. So we're talking about no, we can't.
My director report is updating the commission on what's coming to the commission in the future. Now we're just on to reports from the members of the planning commission.
But we can speak about things that we'd like to speak about or hear about on our agenda. Sure. So.
That's the way I took Commissioner Leah's comments.
Yeah. And I don't think,
are you a report?
Yes.
Yes. So you'd like us to look into this.
Absolutely.
So we need
I would like to remind the commission that the ARP panel, I believe, is appointed every 2 years. So there's a process in which panel members can be either reappointed or new panel members can be.
But we can ask them to come in. So maybe we should agendize that, have them come in, or whoever was willing to come in, and we can tell them our concerns.
I would refrain from doing that at this time. Like I said, the time for them to reapply and come back for appointments would be a better opportunity for the commission.
This is more about their direction, not evaluating individual members, since we don't know who says what. It's just that they seem to be off the rails in certain areas.
Well, I think we could just have them or whoever, a representative, come in and say what our concerns are. That's all. And we're not trying to challenge any individual, I think is what Commissioner Lee is saying. We're just, some of us are concerned on their.
I mean, the entire notion and what's basically described as the purpose of the architecture review panel is to operate as an independent, objective group of experts in design. That's why we have 3 architects, maybe 4, on the panel. That's their job. And they'll give you a recommendation. They don't approve projects. So this body doesn't have to agree with what they recommend, and applicants don't always agree with everything they recommend either.
I think that,
but it's basically free architectural input from 4 or 5 experts. They don't even have to pay extra, and they get that for projects still before that group.
I think also just to piggyback off the director's concern is that it's really a matter, I think, for the city council is that it's really a matter for the city council is that the planning commission doesn't have like subpoena authority or the equivalent to have the ARP account for its actions.
No, I don't think we're trying to interrogate anybody. I think Commissioner Lee is just concerned, and I don't how would you suggest that we handle that? But I think also what Tom was saying is correct. They just make recommendation and we get an applicant who doesn't follow it. Then what do we do? Yes.
I think the proper way to handle it is if we see the ARP coming forward with bad ideas and bad decisions and things that are off the rails, we can comment on that during our deliberations and point out that once again, the Architectural Review Commission wants everything painted pink, and that's inconsistent with the code.
Is that all right, Bob?
Yeah.
I also am not sure that they actually ever approved what's there that you're talking about, because if it was an ADU, they don't even have to go, oh, yeah, we're going to get it.
And let's not talk about any project.
I'll tell you later.
It was the whole house, though, not just the ADU.
I'm being warned.
Off agenda.
Okay. I told you you'd have to control me. Anyway, is there anything else that the commissioners would like to speak about or put on the agenda? Oh, Dennis.
I think after everything we've seen and heard and talked about tonight, I'm definitely going to go to the wine tasting. It's on May 12th, so you'll come.
All right.
And I'll move to adjourn if you want.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposition? No, everybody. Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.